Christian Parenting.
Welcome to Pardon the Mess podcast. I'm your host, Courtney DeFeo, and I am so delighted that you are here. First, I just want to thank you for being a faithful listener. Some of you listen every week, and I'm blown away and just means the world to me. Little housekeeping up front, and then we'll get to our guests. But did you know that Pardon the Mess is part of a bigger nonprofit organization called Christian Parenting? And there's also, not only do they have resources and products like the prayer journal that we enjoy, but it's also got a parenting podcast network with over 30 podcasts. And I honestly and genuinely love being a part of this bigger worldwide mission with Christian Parenting. The mission is to help parents all around the world grow into the perfectly imperfect parents God created them to be. And I love this part too. At Christian Parenting, they say, together we want to confidently raise the next generation of culture-changing Christians. That fires me up and gets me excited to do my job every day. But as a donor-based ministry, Christian Parenting really does rely on generous donors just like you. Those donations help us make the podcast like mine happen. They also go to creating those faith-based resources and products, just like our prayer journal. But I hope that you consider being a part of this mission together with us at Christian Parenting. And if you love this podcast, would you consider giving a year-end gift to Christian Parenting? We're seeking over $23,000 by December 31st that we together can continue to make these podcasts awesome and reach even more parents in 2025. You can give your best gift by December 31st at cpgive.org. And just remember that every little gift matters. That's cpgive.org. All right, on to our guest today. We've got Lisa Clark. I met her at a Christian parenting event and immediately was like, I have to have her on the podcast. First of all, she wrote a book called Raising Sinners. Can we not get behind that? She has a podcast called Raising Sinners, and she's a speaker, author, all the good things, but she's a mom. She's been parenting over 35 years. She's got 8 grandkids, and she is so real. I think sometimes we get around other Christian parenting, it's like, well, they did all that right, and I'm over here messing it up, but she's just real. And so today's episode was perfect for her. I really wanted to kind of think back to over my years as a parent and hers and say, what are some of the best and worst parenting advice that we've received over the years? And so we go there and she talks about all kinds of things that are super helpful. Don't miss the end. So at the end, she talks about really making teaching the gospel a priority, not just knowing about Jesus or loosely talking about faith, but how can we actually teach the gospel and how that is some life-changing advice that someone gave her. And so tune in, enjoy my friend Lisa Clark. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm great. Courtney, how are you? So good
I'm
to
great.
see you.
We always say people don't really care how we know each other, but I care. So I remember we were invited to a Christian parenting luncheon. It was like a fundraiser, and I don't remember who went first, me or you, but we both got just a few minutes to speak, and
Right.
I'm like, oh, I like her. Oh, I like her a lot. Like,
I felt the
so
same
you're my
way.
people.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It was good. It was good.
I love it. Y'all, she wrote a book called Raising Sinners. I mean, is that just not brilliant? I'm like, welcome. We all have sinners, many of them.
Yeah. The fun part is we're sinners raising sinners expecting a different outcome, right?
Well,
so,
there's that. There's
Yeah.
that. I mean, all these, you're like, say what I do. What is it? Do what I say, not what I do. And I'm like, guys, put the dishes in the sink. And then I just load them up with like spaghetti on them.
Exactly. But, we're
Tell me
hopeful.
about your family. What stage of life are y'all in and what
We
are
are
you up to these days?
in the full-blown empty nesting, which is fabulous. Highly recommend it. And about to have our 8th grandchild. So
Wow.
we're busy. Life does not slow down. So that was a myth for sure. But
Okay.
yeah, we're loving the grandparenting.
Are they all close? I mean, like in Texas, or are they?
We've got 2 boys and a girl here in the Dallas area with my daughter Cameron and her husband Brett. So we see them. And then, 2.5 hours north of here in Norman, Oklahoma, we have our daughter Caroline, her husband Brent. They have a ministry at OU called Crossover. It's a big rally on Tuesday nights, similar to Breakaway at A&M. And
awesome.
Yeah, they have 4 boys, 7 and under, and then they're having their 5th child in January, and we do not know what that baby will be. So that's a mystery to all, and we're waiting on that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, if it happens to be a girl, have you seen that it went super viral? and I'm going to blank on her name right now, Sarah Molitar. She has a video. I think she had 6 or 7 boys, but the last one ended up being a girl, and she literally falls on her face. They did a gender reveal. So she falls on her face, like drops a baby, and it
Oh,
is
sure.
so cute. So remind me to send that to you.
Yeah,
Either
I'd
way,
love to
it'll be a
see that.
blessing, but that
Yeah,
baby
she's
girl will
not
be so
finding
sweet.
out. She's not finding out.
Okay.
She's like, it is what it is. It'd almost be easier to have another boy, but of course they would love to have a girl. So it'll be a good either way.
That's awesome. I imagine they fight over you. I was the first person in my family to have grandkids. Mine are 2 of 7. And so I got my mom when we were living in the same town when she was so excited and very youthful to be a grandmother. So
Yes.
20 years ago, she's 74 this week. So she would have been 54 and was like, bring it on, play dates,
Yes.
all about it. Then my brother has kids later. And mom's like, maybe I'll come for like 3 hours. I mean, I could have had her for weeks and she was all in. So do they fight over you with your time?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm the girl mom, so there is that dynamic of, there is a dynamic there. But, when I was younger, so 7 years ago, I was 55, had my first grandchild available 24/7.
Yeah.
And then they started having one like every year or every year and a half or every 6 months. 2 were born within 2 weeks. It became more of a, we're trying to vie for our time here. And now the older I get, and I keep telling my husband, we're 62 and 63, and we're still fairly young, I guess. But in the next 10 years, it's going to get weird,
Tricky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're growing up too, I've already discovered this, the older ones, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because they're able to, dress themselves and all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So you know how it is.
I will say, so my daughter's 18, and then it goes all the way down to our youngest one grandkid is, let's think, 7, maybe something like that. But it's interesting to watch. I will tell you one thing my mom has done really well is like she gets individual time with them so well, and she's very sneaky about it. So they have the best house in the family, and so it's a lake house. We're always there.
Yes.
And we live far. So like when we're there, we're there. And I'll watch her sneak away with one of them and go take a golf cart ride, or one of them go on a nature walk. And I thought, and even just like one of them's favorite dip, or one of them's like, she's so good about personally seeing them. And I don't know how she juggles all of it, but I would think I would tell you each of my kids and my siblings' kids, they say we're the favorite. Like we are her favorite. And they each think that. So
I
really,
love
really
that.
fun. So
That's a
I
good
bet you're doing a
word.
great job. Okay. Well, today we are talking about best and worst parenting advice. And this came from a conversation I was having with our mutual friend, Jill Jefferson. And she was saying that you said the lie is that you only have 18 years. So tell me what you think about that worst advice.
I perpetuated this lie. I'm telling you, I did. When I would speak to moms, I would want to see their tears. I would say, "How many summers? I want you to visualize how many summers you have left." And their eyes would start watering, and they'd say, 6 or 3 or 18, maybe if it was a young mom. But what I discovered, and it dawned on me this last summer, when I had a house full of kids and my daughters and their husbands at my house, in the midst of a summer, just swimming and all that. I'm like, this is 35 summers.
Right.
We were at 35 summers and still growing strong. So it just gets better. Obviously, the point behind you have 18 summers is to be intentional.
Right.
And so that's the point of that. But don't over dramatize it to where you're never going to see your kid again in the summer. You are.
Yeah.
You are. You're going to continue to work on that relationship and make it special. But it's good. So anyway,
and I've done that too. When I have been, I've spoken to many moms over the years, and I think I heard it. So I narrow in, you only have, this lady said, about 8 good spring breaks. And I was like, what? And so then you start making a list of things. And we have been pretty intentional about, like, if we only get a few where they're with us and they're not with their friends, where do we want to go? And so I do think there is a good intention in that, to say, like, be intentional. Later they'll have jobs and they can't go on spring. That was like a shocker to me at my first job. Like, what? I don't have spring break.
Right.
Like, I don't have summer break.
Right.
What is this real world? So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I do think I'm feeling it with the senior, to think like, I'm acting like she's dying when she goes to college, but it turns out they come back and they're around.
I cried that whole senior year. Every time they played that darned old school song, I would just, start bawling, and my kids would look at me, and my daughter and my husband. It didn't dawn on him till we dropped her off at college, and it was
Yeah.
that plane ride back. She went to Belmont that first year, and
Mm.
he got it the whole plane ride back. It
Yeah.
dawned on
You're
him
like,
what was
welcome to
happening
my
here.
tears. What
But
do you appreciate about them as adults? Like your relationship with mother child? How is that special and different?
oh man, so good, so good. So adults, children with their own children tend to FaceTime you. There's no more real phone calls anymore.
Yeah.
It's all FaceTime because their point is babysit my kid for a little bit,
Yeah.
on this phone, but on this device. But I hear about just their whole day, and we walk through things, and it's more of a confidant and
Hmm.
a best friend and a trusted advisor.
Mm.
And, I try not to give a whole lot of unsolicited advice, but I have. I've made
Yeah.
some mistakes there. I've,
Yeah.
I've stepped into stuff I shouldn't have stepped into, but I've
Wow.
learned along the way, and that's been good. So, yeah, I mean, it's a precious season. I love it,
Yeah.
with my
That makes
daughter.
sense to me. So it's like, I'm sure there's things you're seeing that you go, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. And I've seen my parents wrestle over this. Like, I want to say something so bad, but so now you're feeling like if they come to you and say, what do you think about this discipline issue? Or what do you think about this financial issue? Then you're like, okay, game on. They open the door. I can sure.
Exactly. When they open the door, I walk quickly through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've also discovered, I mean, this is just the way it goes, Courtney. The next generation just does it better, and it just keeps getting better. And these young girls having families now, and you've seen this in your own parenting, you have so much more information
Yeah.
available to
Yeah.
you. And so they're wiser in a lot of ways. They've got some great information. Sometimes it's too much, but you have to
Yeah.
be discerning there. But they've got so much good. I'm learning so much from them too. But then sometimes I do think they get on information overload, and it's just they're paralyzed.
Yeah.
Like, which
Yeah.
way do I go? And so it's just practical things and instinctual things. But they are doing things differently. A
Yeah.
lot of it has to do with discipline. And I bite my tongue a lot. I mean, I woke up at my daughter-in-law, and she won't mind me sharing this, nor will my son-in-law, but in Norman one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up. I'm in their guest bedroom, and I hear the kids out in the backyard. I'm like, wow, they're out playing early. They weren't playing, they were running laps. My son-in-law had them out running laps because they got out of their bed too early that morning and woke everybody up in the house, that kind of thing.
That's
And
hilarious.
I was like, oh, this is horrible. I just can't believe they're doing this to these kids. But, that is their choice. And it was kind of funny later on in the day when we talked about it, and the kids get it. That is a form of discipline for them, that they understand that if you have to do that, they don't want to do it. And then they'll stay in their bed till it's time for them to get up or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I just
anyway,
had, have you heard of Dr. David and Amanda Erickson? They are with the Flourishing Family, but they had sent me their book, and then I heard them on Don't Mom Alone, and I was like, I really like their approach. Like I know for my generation or my parents, it was like discipline was on. It was like the right, like
yes,
you will obey based
yes,
on, and it worked. I was an obedient kid. But
sure.
then we swung. I think there's a generation that swung way far the other way that was like, just let them be kids.
Yeah,
And then you get like a 5-year-old that's throwing a fit, and you're like, oh, we should have put some boundaries, some
exactly.
discipline in there. So we had a great couple episodes where they were talking about what is that middle ground and where can we, get a little bit of that, structure back, but not go so loosey goosey. So I bet that's just interesting to watch, as you may have done it differently. But okay, so we're talking worst advice first, and then we're going to get to some best. I'm going to share one, and then you share another. I remember someone saying to me with 2 little girls, "Oh, you just wait. You just wait till they're teens." And I thought, how rude. Like, they knew what they were saying, like, this is physically hard, it's about to be emotionally hard, but I didn't need to
Right.
know that as like a toddler mom with 2
No.
children. It felt very hard to me, like very, very hard. So I've
Yeah.
tried to bite my tongue. And even if I see a little girl, to say, you just wait, the teen years are so fun. And they're
Yeah.
like, I've never heard anyone say that. But I had a mentor say that to me, like, I like my child. I like
Yeah.
who she grew into. Did we have tears? Yes.
Yeah.
But did you experience that too with you just wait?
Absolutely. It's a part of the reason I started teaching The Age of Opportunity, Paul Tripp's book at our church, because he approached those adolescent and preteen teen years so differently. Like, this is a beautiful time. Be
Hmm.
expectant, be honored. You get to walk with this child through these formative years, but it's all about that foundation you lay prior to that.
Yeah.
So if you're in it, prior to that, you are going to see the fruits of your labor during those years.
Yeah.
That is, it's so true though, because it's all in your perspective, and also just what you've done ahead of time. If you put in those hard years, those hard yards prior to that, you're going to see it come to fruition during those preteen and teen years. Now, those middle school years, I mean, nobody wants to go back to middle school.
Yeah.
Those are hard
Hard.
years.
Yeah.
But once you get to high school and you start seeing this young adult and they're making wise choices and they're doing things, if they are, then it's really a blessing. And then once you get past that, when they just become your friends. But yeah, that it's just like the mom that you see in Target. Like, if you get away with your newborn and you're like, I'm going to go to Target. I'm actually going to do something today. I'm going
Yes.
to put on
Yes.
my yoga pants and shirt and
Yeah.
head to Target. And someone stops you and say, "Oh, enjoy these days." What is it they say, the
Days are
days are
long.
long, and that mom, all she can think about is this day. She's not looking at the years down the
Right.
road and all of that. That is just not very fruitful advice you can give a young mom, because she's not seeing past her dirty hair,
Right. Would you
And so,
feel it as like a mom of teens? I am just staring at these little babies like, oh, I want to
of
go back.
course,
But it did not land well with me when someone came up to me. So
no,
I
me
have to like
either.
catch
Me
myself.
either. Like, tell me something that I can take home with me today,
Yeah.
that will help me today.
You're like, do you want to
And
come over and babysit? That would be amazing.
yeah, exactly. You want to bring me a meal? Oh, that's what you can do for me. Bring me a meal.
That's
You
awesome. All right. Tell us another one. What's some bad advice you got?
So we mentioned we didn't term it this way, but we were talking about it when we were talking about the discipline thing. So the gentle parenting was kind of starting
Hmm.
in the late 80s, early 90s, but it wasn't mainstream. It was within more of your hippie mother generation, and that kind of thing. And I had a friend who, we had the children at the same time, and she was going that way. She was real soft voiced, and kind of letting him make choices on his own at 18 months and 2 years old and all this. And I
Yeah.
was watching this and feeling quite intimidated, because I was trying to put some more structure
Yeah.
into place and kind of doing it the way my mom did it, which I knew early on in my parenting I wanted to make different choices than my mother, because my mother was kind of a hothead and I was very much laid back. And so I knew that there would be differences just because of our DNA.
Right.
But I knew I wanted to make different parenting choices, as my daughters do and as their children will. It's a generational thing. We always want to do better, right?
Yep.
It's not an indictment on our parents or our heritage. It's
That's
just
right.
the way
That's
it
good.
goes.
Yeah.
And so I was watching her though and thinking, maybe I'm, doing some things wrong. And I think you nailed it by the discussion that you were talking about earlier, because gentle parenting, of course, I want to be gentle with my children.
Hmm.
Of course I do. That's a fruit of the Spirit of God in me.
Mm.
If I'm growing in my relationship with God, then that's going to come out, and it's going to come out in my parenting. It's going to be one of the ways it's manifest.
Yeah.
But I can't use that as an excuse to not put boundaries. Boundaries are there for our child's safety. They're
Yeah.
there for discipline. We want those boundaries there. The scripture even says that water is beautiful, but if that water comes inside of its boundaries, it hurts. If it
Mm.
comes outside
Yeah.
of its boundaries, fire is beautiful in the fireplace, but it's not if it comes out
Yeah.
of. And so these boundaries are there for good, and they're there for our children. And so we want to be the one. Nobody cares about our kids like we do. Nobody
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
People watching from the outside are watching, just going, what's she doing or what's she not doing? And
Yeah.
so we want to make sure that we're good stewards of that opportunity to discipline our children. But I think it's a good mix. I think it's
Yeah.
a really good mix. We don't want to, discipline with an iron fist, but we all, because that needs to be done in love
Yeah.
and with a bigger goal in mind. But
Love that.
gentle for sure,
Yeah.
gentle for
I
sure.
remember my friend, this is such a crazy story. So, we were in a small group in Atlanta, and one of the parents, I was like, man, they are really good. Like, I kind of watched them from aside,
Sure.
and they would pull their daughter aside and whisper to her, like, we're not going to touch that. And I'm like, get your hands off the tree, So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's kind of nice not to shame them. So I like took a note. Fast forward like 20 years, and I legit was on a mission trip this summer in Florida doing like Lighthouse Family Retreat. And one of those baby girls was the intern. And I'm like, oh, you're a career. And it was like this science study. I'm like, she turned out to be a decent human. Like I went, like we kind of laughed about
Yeah.
their approach, but I think it is good to like look left and right and go like, okay, like, and that's one of the things that I put down as my worst advice was like, well, it can be worse than best, is like trust your gut. And I'm like, but what is your gut? Is your gut your Holy Spirit? Is your
Yes.
gut your feelings? Like I would trust my feelings or my comparison and make a rash decision when it's like, that doesn't work for my kid and our scenario. And like I read 500 books,
Right.
and didn't have podcasts. Thank you, Lord. I would be like binging those and frozen. But so give me your quick thought on that trust your gut idea. Did that help you as you looked at other parents, or where did that go wrong for you? Okay, you guys are going to love this. I have a really fun new podcast recommendation for you and your kids. Wild Interest is the new podcast created and hosted by children, exploring nature, science, current affairs, and fun facts and stories. Man, I wish I'd had this. The series celebrates our innate curiosity with childlike innocence that touches the heart and sparks the imagination. Parents, you're going to love Wild Interest because it's rooted in kindness, compassion, and curiosity. And kids, you're going to love Wild Interest because it's made by kids like you. Hear what it's like to track nature in the deep woods, or avoid being tracked on the internet, or why some sailors are living on a half-sunken ship in the middle of the South China Sea. It's wild. This podcast is a great way for kids to learn about the topics that interest them in a fun and relatable way. It's filled with engaging balance of education, exploration, and recurring segments like grandparent stories, favorite sound, jokes, riddles, and the occasional guest appearance by Bobby the Bigfoot. Wild Interest. Find it wherever you get your podcast. It's wild.
Of course, that you're a mother and you're going to have these instincts, okay?
Yeah.
That just comes with us. That's how we were created.
Yeah.
We're warriors, we're protectors,
Mm.
we're helpers. So, yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
If you are walking with the Lord, that's why it's so important as women, as Christian women, that we're walking with the Lord, because there are going to be times where we aren't going to be able to pray about it.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to know what to do next. And that comes from that spiritual discipline, that spiritual muscle growing in our life every day. And so we're walking with the Lord. We're talking with him. We're worshiping him. We're fellowshipping with believers. We're building that up within us so that when we come to that crux in the road and we're like, okay, what do I do here? Or am I going to explode here? We're very aware of that. And we have a choice. And, I want to be overcome with the Spirit in those times, but I'm only human. So, we are going to make mistakes on that. And we are going to make wrong choices. We had to repent a lot with our kids. We had to make a lot of U-turns, a
Same.
lot. And so, but the point is, are we growing up in our faith as we raise our children? Are we being authentic with them, honest with them? We trust our gut a lot of times, and a lot of times we make the right choices, but sometimes our gut isn't telling us the right thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important that we're walking with the Lord on a
Yeah.
daily basis.
So good. Do y'all see why I love her? Like, since you're in Texas, you haven't given me your address, but I'm just going to knock on those double doors and be like,
Come on
hey,
over.
can I just stay here for a
Come on
second?
over.
I've got
Come on
questions.
over.
Okay, let me ask you one more before we move on to best. Okay, so I remember my kids were at a Christian school, and this doesn't matter what school, but if you're a Christian, you will read scripture, and it is nice for our kids to be kind and just say they're in a tough situation. It's like, be kind, turn the other cheek. And then as they grew, I was like, wait, there are moments where being kind can be, I'm going to get run over. Like, so help me talk through that with young moms, because I think you feel that when you're like, I don't want to fight at every issue, but at some level, you want to give your kids the ability or I don't know if it's permission to say, like, you can't keep saying that to me. So
Mhm.
like, I really did have this moment when they were in middle school going like, I told them just be kind, be kind, be kind. And I don't think they gave them an authority to kind of stand up for themselves. So that's a little tricky question. What do you think on that?
Yeah, that's so good. And ugh.
That's hard.
So kindness and then learning boundaries, and boundaries have to be accompanied with forgiveness,
Yeah.
because if boundaries are with unforgiveness, they become bitter boundaries, and then that
Yeah. It's
becomes
good.
a brick wall,
Yeah.
which we don't want to be behind. And so we're kind, we're loving, we're gentle, we're all those things that the fruit, that's what's growing in us as a believer. And for a young believer, those are the things that are growing in us, replacing those other things in our life. But we're
Yeah.
always growing. And so, yes, we're going to be kind, but I give you permission that if someone is treating you unkindly, you have my permission to put up a boundary there, to walk away, and to continue, being a friend to everyone. But you do
Yeah.
not have to maintain that. I give you that
Yeah,
permission.
that's awesome. And I think it's also one thing Lisa Turker said the last couple years that I have just like played over and over again in my head is she said, is it a mistake or a pattern? And when my kids were little, I'm like, they say hurt people hurt people. I'm like, you don't know what's going on with that kid. They could be
Right.
hungry, their parents could be going through a divorce. So we're going to just kind of assume the best and give some grace. And I think where the boundaries come in is like you were saying, like if there's 2 years of just repeated, really cruel behavior, then we're like, this is a different story than somebody coming in having a bad day and being like a kid, because kids are kids and my
Definitely.
kids were rude. So
Definitely. And I remember one time, because of my gut was telling me to come back to her when people were being mean to her, to come back and say, well, you don't know what and
mm,
finally she looked at me one day, she goes, Mom, you're always sticking up for the other person.
mm, yes.
So that made me realize, no, I am my child's advocate first.
Hmm.
I need to be her biggest fan. She needs to know I'm in her court.
Yeah,
So that doesn't mean that she can act however she wants to act, but I need to be on
believe.
her team.
Man, and I got that same word from my husband. He was like, you take everyone else's side. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a painful one. Okay, let's move on to some best ones. What are some
Okay.
best advice that someone gave you that you'd pass on?
Keep the sex talk open at the table.
Okay.
Don't make that a one-time discussion. I remember getting a little cassette tape from a woman named Mary Flo Ridley, about
Yep.
the birds and the bees, and I devoured that thing because I wanted to be different than I was raised on that. I wanted my children to be able to come to me and ask me these questions and it not be such an embarrassing topic, or act. I didn't want to act like I didn't know what was going on. Of course, I knew what was going on. And so
Yeah.
that was one of the best things. Highly recommend her ministry. She's still going
Yeah.
strong.
Yes.
Um,
Crazy.
yeah, I know. Her daughter, I think, is with her now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
but
so cool. Does she know? Have y'all met? Does she know you did it all those years ago?
no, no, no.
Oh, I'm gonna send this to her. She would love
Okay. Yeah.
this.
No, it was instrumental because it gave me just an open door to maintain that talk. Now, my daughters were very different. They were 5 years apart. One asked a question while our pastor, he was mentioning the word sex in our worship service. She was 5 or 6 years old. She asked right then, what is it? I said, I'll talk to you when I get home. I'd heard Mary Flo speak,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm not going to put an end to this, and we're going to talk about it. And we got home, and I thought she might forget, but she asked immediately when we walked in the doors. And my husband like left really fast. And so I just went through the basics, just like I was taught in that little cassette tape. And that was enough for her. I don't think we had many discussions after that. That was enough information for her. She was very private. And we didn't talk a lot about it after that. She's about to have her fifth kid, so I guess she figured it all out. Now, the other one asked a question, I'm serious, every other day of her life. there was always something. She was just very inquisitive about things, and she would hear things at school, and she would come right home to me, and we would
Wow.
talk about it. And it was just such a rich learning experience for the both of us, and it was just a beautiful thing. And so, just keeping those discussions on the table and not acting like either they're a one-time thing or those are closet talks. They were around our dinner table if it was opened up, and so
Which can be
that was
super
good.
intimidating. Like, I am like super modest and don't want to talk about any of it. My sister
Yes.
is like, just, fine walking around with all her clothes on.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
did find that difficult for me. And it
Yeah.
wasn't anything my mom did. I just thought, I'm going to have to get comfortable talking about this. And so I did her course as well and was super
Sure.
helpful to be like, I'm going to turn red and walk out. So like I'm
Right.
going to need some like, language around what to say because your first instinct is be like, I don't know, la 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 la. Like babies just get here, bye. Like
I
it's so
know.
stressful.
I know. So it was really good. That was great advice that I got. I loved it. What about
Love
you?
it. Love it. All right, we'll link to that. I love them.
Yeah.
Okay, one teacher, one best advice, and I don't remember exactly how she put it, but she's a dear friend of mine and she was a fifth grade teacher, Mandy Savage. Hey, Mandy. She was teachers for both of my kids. And we had a relationship where I could say, what do you wish you could say to parents? And she said, please back up. And it really got to me because if I lean one direction, it's shocking to you, Lisa. I'm a hover.
Yeah.
I'm a stay involved. I'm a help them out, which makes sense when they're 3. We're going to cut up their food. We're going to hold their hand. But as they were growing, she said, you have got to back up. And she said, very few middle school parents do this, but you're going to thank me later if you let them
Yeah.
own their schoolwork. And so, I think that's scary for like if my sister, she's listening, she's like, if we don't check Graham's schoolwork, he's failing. Like he
Yeah.
will never. And so it's tricky. But
Yeah.
I do think at that point I backed up and they checked their logs and they checked their online thing. And every now and then, but it was not an everyday, your quiz is due. Did you turn in that paper? And in middle school, before it mattered, they learned that if you don't turn the thing in, you get a 0. And so now in high school, I literally am so hands off, like I'm clueless. And they're like, do you even know my teachers? I'm like, no, I sure
Yeah.
don't. And I'm so sorry about that. I think I
You're
swung
good.
too far
You're
the other
good.
way.
Yeah.
Did you see value in that? And was it hard for you to kind of back up a little bit?
So good. I love the advice. And my nature is to stay back. I'm not a
Okay.
hoverer.
Okay.
And so we did not really have that situation, but I gave a lot of that advice. I would say the way I phrased it was take 10 steps back.
Mm,
Take 10 steps back, give them some space.
yeah.
You want them failing, you want them falling while you're there able to catch them and mentor them and disciple them through it. You want them
Right.
making those mistakes now. So that if you're their puppet master, and I talk a lot about this in the book, but if you're their puppet master, when you're no longer there pulling the strings, we wonder why so many of our children are underachieving during those college years and leaving their faith and all of the things that might happen during those years. A lot of it goes back to just not being able to become young adults
Yeah.
because mom just couldn't do it. And I get it
Yeah.
because we want them to be successful.
Yeah.
But if they don't learn when we're still there, then it's just handicapping them. So that's
Well,
great.
and I spoke to a group at Prestonwood yesterday, and you saw the look in their face when I said that in like panic. And I was like, listen to me. I'm like, it is also a slow build. I think it's knowing which extreme you fall on. So if you're just a hands off versus
Yeah,
like hover, where are you? What is your tendency? And then knowing like over time, it's a release and a release and a release. So like at 18, Ella's having to go to the doctors now and fill out her forms. And would it be
yeah,
quicker and easier for me to do all of them? Yes, but she can't get to college and be like, what's my social security number? But like in 4th grade, I'm making the appointment. I'm going
right.
with her. And so I think that I hope will encourage people that like just know where you land and then slowly let the rope out. And you'll see how confident and capable they are. You're like, wow, they step up because they're not used to us, making the thing. But
Most children want to grow up.
hmm
They do. But we over parent.
hmm
I call it loving your child too much,
mm,
and it can hurt. Brad, I was so laid back. Brad was constantly telling me, Lisa, you got to get in the game. You got to get in the game. He's more of a hoverer than I
Okay.
am.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not only afraid I'm going to come home one day and find the kids playing in the street, I'm going to see them playing with knives in the street. It was that bad. So I had to kind of, I had to kind of get a little excited and
Yeah.
get a little bit more intentional, and that was good advice from him. It's a good partnership.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, it's a thing. It's a
Yeah.
thing.
And I had to tell Ella the other day, I had stepped into several things. I mean, it is my nature. Like by knee jerk reaction, I'm going to get involved. And I really feel like God's working on me. He showed me even the last 6 months of places that it was not helpful. And so I said to Ella, I want you to hear me. Like when I stop and say, you go do that, I said, this is not your issue. This is me that has jumped in and I'm here to help. I love you. Like I will pick up, like I love being an involved mom. But I said, if you feel me catching myself, this is not you need to grow up. This is, I need to quit stepping in. And she's like, oh, okay. And so the other day, where were we? She said, Mom, can you do that? And I paused and she said, actually, I'll do it. And I was like, yes. So, it's a balance, but
Yeah.
I think that would be one I would say. So what else you got on your best list?
One thing I wrote down was let the dad be the dad.
Mm,
We kind of look at the dad like a helper, but when he steps in to be dad, we kind of want to protect our kids, or maybe we don't like the way they're doing it, or we look at them more of just a babysitter, something along those lines. And I think it's real helpful to make it real clear to our kids and to ourselves that we're all in this together, that he's as much your parent as I am. I know that our roles might be different, but I'm going to allow him space to be your dad. And I'm going to give him the honor and with all that it entails,
wow.
discipline and loving you and spending time with you and all those things. Because moms, our nature, we're the heartbeat of the home.
Yeah.
And so this is our passion is raising our children and loving our families and taking care of them. But sometimes we dismiss dad a little bit. And I think I got that great advice. Just let him be dad,
That's great.
Yeah.
I definitely could have used that about 15 years ago, but I think you're right. It's all well intentioned. It's like, I'm home all day. I know what's
Right.
going on. And I joked with him, he would come into a fight or something and he would just out of desperation, just sling out a consequence. Like,
Sure.
you cannot watch the iPad until 2030. And I'm like, whoa, like you don't even know what's going on. And now your
Right.
consequence has just
Yeah.
ruined my days for 3
Yeah.
days. But I do think there were times he needed me to, because he thought she's so capable, she knows what she's doing. I would
Yeah.
get to a point where I'd say, I need you. And here's
Yeah.
specifically how I need you. And we're getting into a better rhythm now where he is the rational, the calm. Like if I get emotionally overwhelmed into, he's like, let's just take a beat.
Yeah.
I'm like, what kind of wisdom is that? Just take a breath and not freak out every day. So I love that you said that.
Okay.
I've got 2 practical ones and then we'll end with you. Someone told me to get a laminating machine, which is right back here, and posters. My friend was like, put 35 posters in your closet. Cause every kid is
Amazing.
like, hey, tomorrow I have a poster thing due. And you're like, I do not want to go to CVS at 10 p.m. So loads of posters. And then I'm a laminator at the soccer game this week. I was like, everybody's like, I can't see who's who. And I said, oh, do you want laminated rosters? I got a laminator. So I'm a laminating machine on Amazon. I'll link to it.
I love that. That is so practical and fun. And, everybody needs one, everybody needs one, and everyone does need posters. I mean, you can't
Posters,
pair it
just
without
hide them in a
poster
closet.
board.
Posters,
Yeah.
posters. All right, where do you want to end, my friend? I know you've got a wealth of, I really do respect you, and so glad that Christian Parenting connected us because you're just like the mentor I would want to sit with every day. So thanks for being here and just help us think of 1 or 2 other best advice that you held on to.
Sweet. It's been an honor and a privilege to be with you today. I think the last thing I would share is just be deliberate in your teaching your children the gospel. I heard my friend Susie Hawkins, who's about 10 years down the road from me, speak when I was a young mom. And she said, what I was discovering raising my daughters was I would hear them pray at night. Thank you, Jesus, for dying on the cross, saving me from my sins. Amen. And she said, I had read a book called The Dangers of Raising Your Children in a Christian Home. And she said, it totally resonated with me when I heard my daughters praying that way. And she said, I loved that they were thanking Jesus for that. But it was coming across as something flippant and mundane. And she said, our salvation is never mundane. It's the joy of our lives. And so that spoke to me that day. And I said, I'm going to start talking to my children more about the awesome work of the gospel, the awesome work that Jesus came and died for us, and becoming very intentional in that. And so whether it was scripture memorization or providing them tools, girls love journals, they love devotionals. We celebrated their rebirth day every year with making sure they knew that day and it was special to them and how important it was to us as a family. Worshiping together at church. As they grew older, one wanted to go with her friend to church at a different church. And we said, that's amazing. You can do that on Saturday night if they worship then, or Sunday night if they worship then. But as a family, we worship, on this day. And just making sure that that's a priority, and that those things that creep in, whether they're practices or games or all of the things this was a non-negotiable, that worshiping together as a family was a non-negotiable, that this is part of our DNA. This is part of our identity as a family. So just all of those things, just elevating those things to the top, because as you know, Courtney, so much can come in. And before you know, I'm writing about it now. I'm calling it the P word, and how it derails our family plan. And that P word is potential. And when you hear that your child's got potential in some area, all of a sudden, life as you knew it stops. And you're going to this,
so good.
You're doing this, and you're doing this, and all of a sudden your life is crazy. So, and those things that you said were important to you and that you valued as a family are now on the back burner, whether they're family meals or worship or whatever it is. And so anyway, just make sure that you are intentional about those things, because there's nothing humdrum about our salvation and the fact that Jesus died for us. And so elevating that and making sure you're having those discussions is really important.
So perfect. Hey, Lisa, thank you for ending there, because I think what I remember feeling was overwhelmed, that was all on me to teach the gospel. And it's like, now that you look at it and I look back over these years, it's like the church that they went to, the camp, the mentor, the small groups, like all these things formed together had the gospel around them in tons of different ways. And did they all work? No, but it made me feel like I'm partnering with the local church to raise my family in a way that knows Jesus. And it's not on how well I could, spit out a sermon at dinner. And so I'm so glad you said that. Tell people where they can find you, and then tell them a little sneak peek about what you're working on, because I'm 2 years away from 50. And so I'm excited about what's next.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Lisa E. Clark, and I also have a website, lisaclarkspeaks.com. So those are two ways you can find me. But I'm excited. I've got some new things going. I have some new books I'm writing. One is for women over 50. It's called Take Two. And it's a new Bible study for women over 50 and how to just look forward to the second half of life. So stay tuned for that coming in the spring.
Love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pardon the Mess. As always, we've got more encouragement and resources over at christianparenting.org. And you can also stay connected with us on social media at Pardon the Mess. And if you like this episode, I'd love for you to do two things. Press follow on whatever podcast platform you love, and also be sure to leave a rating so other parents can find us. Remember, you're never alone in this beautiful mess of parenting.